meet you.
Likewise. Where are you?
I'm in Sydney at the moment.
Okay, how are you doing out there?
Uh, Sydney, I've been back here for 10 years. I lived in London prior to this. Missing it a lot, actually.
Yeah, I feel you there. I feel
Yeah,
you.
I've been listening to you for many, many, many years. I think you are a great pioneer of raising consciousness. So I'm very, very delighted that you would do this morning. Thank you so much for taking the time.
My great pleasure. My great pleasure.
So I want to take it back a little bit for people who have never heard of you. I could just start on, right up here and go for it. But I want to sort of target people who've never heard of you to make them more aware of who you are and what you're about, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, ask away. Question. I don't want to summarize my own life because it's just too much, and it's fall over myself. But by all means, any question goes with me. I'm very happy.
So I just wanted to lay out some of the things that you have done, that you've put together, first of all. So you first founded an organization called Humanitad in 1998, which was about uniting nations and facilitating international cooperation on human-centered issues. Correct me if I'm wrong about any of this. 2013, you founded New Earth Project, which is a beautiful framework for a new emerging civilization, harmonious one, unlike we are at the moment. In 2015, you founded the ITNJ, now the International Tribunal of International Justice. I've listened to countless hours of that. It's fantastic. And then in 2021, you founded the Lazarus Initiative, which I have also watched countless hours of, which is a platform for global consciousness and a community of truth seekers with innovative ideas. So really, you have just done so much. I don't know where you get time to relax, but tell me, what is your main goal at the moment? What are you mostly focused on?
Well, I'll just add a couple more things there, which will help to triangulate the conversation. So there's also the World Health Sovereignty Summit, which I launched in 2019 in Asia. Was the first convention we had with the World Health Sovereignty Summit. It's repeated a couple of times since then. But that was really beginning the whole conversation into health sovereignty before COVID even landed, because I realized in mid 2019 it was a critical issue, and it was fast coming down the roost, and pulled in Del Bigtree and Dr. Robert O. Young and a great many other, Dane Widgington now, who I see is on Tucker Carlson, and Jeffrey Smith with GMOs. I started to bring together the leading figures in sovereignty as it related to human health and reclamation of our food and our health. So that was the WHSS, the World Health Sovereignty Summit. That's still going strong. I also founded the AGN, the Arise Guerrilla News Network, in 2020. I only put that on suspension a year ago because of what I've been working on this last year. Just too much work, and I couldn't continue broadcasting through AGN and doing those updates, but that was frontline activism. So the Arise Guerrilla News Network is still there and is being picked up later this year in a big way. So that's an important piece of the equation, is the AGN. And there's also the World Hereditary Council, the WHC, which is now a formal body, and that launched this year. And that's taken us a few years to orchestrate. And it's kicked off in the last few months, connected to the International Tribunal for Natural Justice's latest Judicial Commission of Inquiry, which is into the Vatican crimes. It's a Judicial Commission of Inquiry into the doctrine of discovery, which is the edict that issued from the Vatican hundreds of years ago, giving a license to the imperial crowns of Europe to go forth and conquest the world in the name of God and genocide all the black-skinned, brown-skinned, red-skinned, yellow-skinned people in the name of God. So that huge crime of ages is what we're now throwing a spotlight on through the Judicial Commission into the doctrine of discovery. And that's given birth to the World Hereditary Council, because we're now taking the living testimonies from the kings and queens and paramount chiefs of the First Nation peoples all around the world who've survived these genocidal endeavors, and are now coming back and retaking and reclaiming their hereditary leadership, their thrones, their kingdoms. This is the big movement that's underway. And you're going to see it kicking off later this year into next year in a monumental way. The Aboriginal and First Nation peoples of the world are standing up and taking back their kingdoms, their chiefdoms, and their sovereign rights. And that includes the gold and the oil and the gas and everything locked in the soil in their land holdings. So as the Babylonian corporation now collapses, exemplified, of course, by the satanic witchery of Washington District of Columbia, the Crown of England, and the City of London, Crown of England, same thing, and the Vatican complex in Rome, and of course Basel, Switzerland, the home of the black nobility and the real comptrollers of the global financial system. So those four, Basel, Switzerland, Vatican, Rome, City of London, and Crown of England, and the Washington District of Columbia. Those four privately owned principalities are now on the cusp of free fall. That is what the Great Reset is all about. That's what this conflagration in Iran is, and the Gulf is all about right now. It's all connected to this story and this revelation. But all the point I'm trying to make here is it's also important, the work that we've been doing and that I've been doing for many years in the redemption of the hereditary leadership of the world is essential to how revelation is unfolding right now.
Right, right. I'm going to get onto all of that. But before we do, there's one thing I want to ask you, and this is about what you're doing in Africa. Now, I believe you are doing something with hemp in Africa, and I was shocked to hear that 62,000 products can be made from one plant, which will end up exporting, which that just blew me away. Can you tell me a little bit about this?
I can, and it also perfectly segues into what I wanted to also announce is that on Wednesday next week, the 1st of April, we are unveiling and launching the New Earth Exchange and the New Earth Treasury and the New Earth Coin, the NXC, and the New Earth banking system, which is also going online later this year. So that is the biggest piece of work that we're delivering to the world, is an entire parallel financial system alongside the satanic fiat extractive war economy system. We have built and developed a new global financial system, and I mean a global financial system. We built it on new rails, the whole thing. And that's the treasury, the bank, the exchange, the wallet, the coin, and the capacity for people of the world to opt out of the satanic fiat system and opt into the New Earth Exchange. It is your exchange. It's your bank. It is your asset, your treasury. It's where you are safe and finally able to step out of subjugation to the Crown of England or to the Inland Revenue, any of these other satanic forces that have tried to continue to sequester our wealth from us as a species, and have acted as the third-party intervention principle for the last few hundred years. That's now over. It's just now a question of choice. People can choose to step into autonomy and sovereignty, and that choice will be made available certainly through the New Earth Exchange this coming week. So that's the big piece. One of the big projects that we'll be listing in a few weeks' time on the New Earth Exchange, and just so you know, we have many, many, many billions of dollars. I could name the exact figure, but it's such a staggering number, and I don't want to say it, because if I say the figure now, in 3 weeks from now, it's going to change enormously. But we have inordinate billions of dollars worth of projects being listed on the New Earth Exchange for monetization through issuing tokens and coins. So we've created an exchange where people can come and say, well, we want to build a bridge or a school or a hospital or a town or a whatever, hemp industrial park or a, whatever, rocket ship to fly us to fucking Venus, doesn't matter. Whatever your project is, provided it makes sense, provided it has a bona fide feasibility affixed to it, a feasibility study, third-party audit feasibility, which we can help to arrange. we can tokenize it and list it on the New Earth Exchange. So this is open to mamas and papas all around the world, to anyone who's got a bona fide idea that needs to get to market. It could be a product, could be a free energy technology, could be a cancer cure, the big fucking dirty word, the dirty C word, cure. You know, it can be a cancer cure. We should call these things for what they are and not be afraid of the FDA and the CDC and the NIH and all these other acronyms, these other agencies that have stood sentinel between us and our capacity to heal ourselves, or to travel on anti-gravitational technologies, or to power up our homes and our communities on free energy technology, or even better than that, frequency healing radiant technologies, which we used to have in the world. You know, go back to the ancient Tatarian golden age and see what the missing history and all of that. So we're now on this cusp of the new geometry of revelation, which is going to be an ancient futures phenomenon that takes us back to what was stolen from us, what we lost as a civilization, as an angelic sentient species on the cusp of our ascension, and how that was stolen from us. Now, this has happened multiple times, but we're now at an extraordinary point where we're about to lift off into the vertical, and nothing will be able to stop us this time around. So the New Earth Exchange is a very important piece. The hemp that you raised is, in a sense, the cornerstone of a new global economy, because hemp is a plant gifted to us from, I believe, Sirius B. I think it was the Syrian star nation that gifted it to us. I can't remember, but it was an off-world and a non-terrestrial intelligence that gifted cannabis to us a long time ago. I think within a couple of 100,000 years. And as that plant was gifted to us, it was a plant that was gifted to us to become the rudiment or the foundation of a 0-point global economy, meaning to say everything we could dream and conceive of could be built out of, made out of this one single plant. And it's not just what could be built. It turns out that hemp is the best feed for livestock. It's the best feed for poultry, for chickens. It's the best food for human beings and for dogs. It's the best, and cats. It's the best thing to clothe yourself in terms of bioresonance and hemp fabrics. It's the greatest thing in terms of bioresonance to be able to build using hempcrete as cement. It is 11 times stronger than steel. We can extract graphene from it, and it can be applied as a ceramic and as a silica, so we can literally make glass windows out of hemp. We can build an entire automobile or a vertical takeoff and lift jet or a space rocket out of hemp and nothing else. We can build computers and telephones from hemp entirely, including the silicon chips. So we've got to a point now where we ask ourselves the question, well, what happened? Why is hemp not prevalent? Well, go back to the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act, where Congress in the United States was bought out by the oil and gas barons back in the day, who knew full well that hemp was about to take America and the world into a vertical 0-point economy, because airships were being built all around the world. You could power, and Henry Ford, God bless him, had built an entire car out of hemp. Lock, stock, and barrel, and it was fueled by hemp ethanol, hemp-based ethanol. So that was about to erupt. Car tires were built out of hemp rubber, every single component. Do you understand?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Fuel, everything. So given that that was about to take place, and that hemp can grow 2 to 3 crops a year almost anywhere in the world, quickest growing thing, that's it. That would have eradicated the energy crisis, would have eradicated 95 to 97% of all imports of all products you wouldn't need to have. There would not need to be World Trade Organization. There wouldn't need to be international banking and settlements and all of that, because there'd be no debt. So you begin to see that the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act was an unbelievable scandal and clandestine operation by these satanic forces operating through the Khazarian mafiosi, this satanic central banking cartel. We're talking about, obviously, the Morgans and the Rothschilds and the rest of these motherfuckers. But the point being, we were set absolutely set in 1937. Now, before that 1937 Marijuana Tax Act, every farm in the United States by law had to farm a minimum of 200 acres of hemp. Why? Because the founding fathers knew it was going to set them into a vertical zero-point economy. So, and that was about to happen. Then you have to also look at what else happened in 1937, the Hindenburg disaster. The Zeppelin, this huge airship, erupted, blew up in flames, came crashing to Earth on a live television transmission. That was a psyop. That was a 9/11 day in 1937. That's all it was. It was literally 9/11 happening in 1937 on television. And that ended airship travel that year. The entire global airship industry base flatlined through an apocalyptic psyop that was orchestrated by these satanic forces. So they realized that prior to that, the world was about to move into the vertical. We were literally taking off and we were going to be flying, gliding around the surface of the earth using airships and aerial travel. Very cheap, very, very beautiful way to move, beautiful way to travel. But that was all ended and destroyed. So marijuana was taken down and airships were taken down in 1937. Here we are in 2026, and the New Earth and New Earth Exchange are resurrecting both airships and the hemp industry. So we have industrial hemp partners. We have the leading industrial hemp partners in the world now, in both America and Africa, now as our core partners. We've got the capacity to do the extraction for silica and for graphene and so on and so forth. We understand how to industrialize hemp, grow it in Africa, Mexico, Southeast Asia. Obviously, the problem we've got is compliances with government statutes, because it's been kind of marginalized or even outlawed in many parts of the world. So in Africa, myself and my team have been making the case to various parliaments and various governments in the last year and a half, 2 years, meeting with them, meeting with royal establishments, meeting with the parliaments, sitting and with the cabinets and talking them off the shelf. And I've been certainly standing up in front of them and explaining that they were mind fucked by white man's poison after 1937 Marijuana Tax Act, and that if they step back and allow hemp to come back in, we can help grow their economy vertically and eradicate 95 to 97% of exports within a 3 to 5 year period. So that changes the ledger, changes the balance sheet of these countries that will be stepping into this economy. And thank you for raising the subject of hemp, because in that sense, it is the cornerstone of the emergent new earth economy.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I was absolutely shocked when I heard you talk about this. You haven't spoken to the Australian government at all, have you?
I wouldn't speak to a satanic force like the Australian
No,
government.
no,
They're not worthy of dialogue or conversation.
no.
They're a clutch of gibbering morons, dressed up. Each one of them should be shackled, bonded, and taken into the market square and pelted with vegetables. I mean, they're just a goddamn disgrace,
Yeah.
as are all Commonwealth governments roundabout now. They're all playing into the same satanic nonsense, which is fine. It's like end of days scenarios. They're like a dystopian Frankensteinian, model of false light reality that's disassembling in broad daylight. But I have conversations with politicians. I have conversations with parliamentarians, conversations with religious leaders and power people and industrialists, bankers. Today, I've been sharing meetings with blue chip bankers and traders on both sides of the Atlantic, super bright people who understand the old model is broken. But when you get to politicians, having a conversation with a politician is a pointless exercise, because all politicians are doing essentially is driving forward agendas, which is what finances them and secures their pensions. So politics and politicking needs to be put into dissolution. It will be. The algorithm of the new earth that we are now pushing forward, and when I say we, myself and millions of people around the world, but certainly our teams in Africa, Asia, Central and North America, and in to some extent in parts of Europe. We've got many of our core team, and the Middle East. I can tell you, I'm chairing meetings every day from people around the world connected to the New Earth committees, the New Earth teams, and we're seeing such an incredible sea change at every level. Everyone knows that Babylon is falling.
Yeah.
It's a question of how do you distance yourself from being collateral damage? How do you distance yourself as that Tower of Babel falls in your midst? You just have to be very mindful, very present, and be able to step to the side, to the left or to the right. And that's all that anyone who is sane right now is having to do, is simply be aware that you don't get pulled into the vortex of the collateral damage as Babylon falls, because it most assuredly is falling right now.
Yeah, I think if you're walking in the right light, as you would say, or consciousness, I think it will bounce off you. I think if you've got the right mindset, it's all about tuning your mind to that exact,
Yeah, well,
frequency.
you're describing armor of God, and you're absolutely right. That is the technology that avails itself to humans who conduct right action and stand in pure truth. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. COVID didn't really affect me whatsoever. I didn't wear a mask. I didn't vaccinate. I didn't do anything. I jumped a fence to get my child into a swimming lesson because I wasn't allowed in. I did what I could and I wasn't bothered. It didn't affect me. Partly because I felt that I knew it was coming. What woke me up was I lived next door to the London bombers, 20 years ago. And I was caught in a siege, the great London siege of the police going in to arrest them. And it was a very interesting moment in my life. And there were a few things that I was, this is not what they're telling me. That just opened my world. But that was what woke me up. And I started listening to people like you and David Icke, Dolores Cannon, many Max Spears, all these sorts of people. And I went down so I'd gone down this rabbit hole many, many years ago. So COVID didn't really get to me. What woke you up, or were you just born in this? Were you born with this right?
No one's born with it. We're born with an instinct for truth. We're born with an instinct to follow conscience. I believe that every human being is born with that same instinct to follow the dictate of conscience. But then life happens, shit happens, stuff
Yeah.
happens, wounds and scars form, traumas occur. The trial of separation kicks off, grief and what have you become part of the fabric of our lives, and we all make these kind of micro determinations to take a left fork in the road or the right fork in the road. And then there's appetites and addictions that come along and tantalize us or tempt us or thwart us or entrap us variously and ensnare us. And we get caught up in those feedback loops of appetite and of addiction. And before we know it, we're looking at ourselves in the mirror and saying, well, I've lost my innocence. I'm not that bright-eyed, bushy-tailed creature that was looking out into the world through the eyes of a child. I've lost that innocence. And then hopefully there's a reckoning, and there's a rite of passage and a death and a rebirth and a resurrection. That's why the Lazarus Initiative, that's why I launched the Lazarus Initiative, because I wanted to speak through the Lazarus Initiative to everyone, every human being who understands the trial of separation and who has had to move consciously into a living death in order to be reborn and re-cleansed. That's the second coming, at the individual level. Do we have the courage to, because we all become sullied by life and by the traumas of life, especially in our youth. And the question is then, in your 20s, into your 30s, into your 40s, into your 50s, how do you address relationship with self? And that becomes the only important question. Now, a lot of people, possibly most people, still end up defaulting to their addictions and to their appetites. So they eat too much and become a fat motherfucker and very unhappy as a result of that. And that then becomes a feedback loop of misery and of diabetes and whatever else. We all see variously how that afflicts us in our lives. And the addictions to nicotine and to alcohol and to drugs and to substances and to pornography and to whatever the hell it is. And they become also feedback loops and until eventually we tire of those cycles of appetite and addiction, and hopefully again go through a death and a rebirth. So we constantly have this opportunity in life to stop right here, right now, in the geometry of the living moment and say, I choose life. I choose immanence. I choose immortality. I choose divinity. And we're able to reboot and rebuild ourselves and reboot that source code. That's the incredible technology of the human being, is that we have that divine will and that capacity to do that. I mean, I don't know if you're a child murderer, by the time you get caught, I don't know that there's any redemption for you in this world. I very much doubt it.
Mm.
But I'll tell you, I've seen people hit real dark low points and then resurrect. So we're in an extraordinary time when each of us can do that. And you know, you mentioned the COVIDiocy as an era which afflicted us. Well, that was a tremendous dialectic that opened up. And of course, I was one of the pundits, probably one of the leading pundits making noises. Certainly, that's the feedback I get from around the world,
Yes,
that
you
I
were.
did help to awaken so many people. And that's because I came from, and this is to answer your question finally, I came from a war background. So my own story was not being born knowing what's right or wrong, is being born in a situation where I, in a sense, was shell shocked and stunned into a kind of witness, a state of no fucking way.
Mm.
This kind of separation, this kind of trial, uh, this kind of shock is not correct. It's not appropriate. It's not right. It's not resonant. And so I had a horrible kind of clash with the field of reality. Certainly at the age of between 5 and 7, it hit me big time when I was able to see I'm born in a war, in the middle of a war. I'm torn off my mother's tit for up to a year at a time. There's soldiers and guns and grenade screens and things that go bang and terrifying kind of just patriarchy and aggression. And it's just all of that stuff that a war zone does to you. It's just not pretty. But it became for me the contrast against which in the next 7 years, between 7 and 14, 15, I was able to define exactly what I don't want to see in this world, which is that,
Mm.
which is precisely what I was forced to witness. And so by the time I hit 16, 17, and became a poet, an artist, grew my hair, started fucking girls, and just learning kind of psychosexual release from that trauma bonding, I moved into a different world, one of very expansive, creative kind of. But I never went into drugs or alcohol. I always had that profound sensibility not to move into any synthetics at all. And I'm very pleased. It's the only thing that really separates me from my peers today, is that I've always been utterly sober. And I'm glad of it, but I don't make any judgment of anyone else. It's just my journey. So I would say to you, it was growing up in a war, and it was maintaining absolute sobriety and being able to be in a state of witness without judging. That is the technology that I have used to my advantage and to the advantage of the work that I now do.
Wow, that's incredible. I've actually listened to a lot of your grandmother as well, bless her soul, rest in peace. Yeah, she's a beautiful woman. I was addicted to listening to her. She reminded
Well,
me.
I was really pissed off when she died. I mean, it was so fucking rude because, you know, the last day I saw her and we just finished doing a little film. I've not even released the last film. Can you believe it? 5 years. I still haven't released the last film we made. She'd come down to the beach house in Bali and spent the weekend with me. We'd woken up in the morning. I'd gone through to her room, and she was seated there like a white bushman as usual. And she was munching on like a croissant and lashings of butter and, raspberry jam, and having her third coffee of the morning. And she had her computer laptop open up, and she had her iPad, and she had her phone on, and she was constantly researching the world, studying things. And I remember sat down. I remember walking into her room, seeing her sat there surrounded with croissant and coffee and cake and her paraphernalia, and just going, oh my God, you're such a beaut, at your age in your 90s, and you're just a child of the universe, just learning and just seeing the world through the eyes of a child. God, I loved her. And then later that day, I remember her driver came down to pick her up and take her back up north on the island, and she didn't want to walk down the steps because there was a big ledge going to the driveway. So I went and picked her up and I just picked her, lifted her, and put her down on the grass. And I remember thinking, my God, she weighs as much as a sparrow. She's like,
Mm.
there's nothing, just bones, so fragile. And then she fucking died a couple of days later. It was wrong timing, but it was perfect timing. And then, I had to go and speak at her funeral, and which I don't do. I mean, my mother and my sister and I and my family, we've all sworn that we'll never attend each other's funerals under any circumstances. But in her case, because it was in Bali, it was a foreign climes, I felt really obligated to go and attend that. And a lot of people on the island who just worshipped her, especially the Balinese and the Balinese priesthood, who all turned up because they revered her as a priestess, because she'd participated in some of the most abstruse ceremonialism over the last 30, 40 years. So I turn up at her thing, and there she's laid out in her casket, filled with flowers, no little face
Oh,
peering up through the flowers. And I remember looking at her and sort of whispering some irreverent thing or another in her ear, because I knew she was loitering around, hovering. That's the curious thing, is the last conversation she and I had a few days earlier had been precisely that. And I will release the film. Okay. I'm going to commit to doing it because it's an amazing film, The Last Conversation with Granny Muffin. But we
wow.
were under the umbrella and in the garden, lying on our backs with the umbrella over us, and so the diffuse light coming through, and just her and me looking up at the camera. And I was having this conversation. I was saying to her, well, um, Granny Muffin, that I put up a post on social media recently, a beautiful photograph of you and a beautiful little bit of prose, and people thought that you died, and that's why I was putting a bit of prose next to a photograph of you. So I had hundreds, literally hundreds of people from around the world were writing letters of condolence for you. And she was cackling next to me, finding that hilarious. And then I was reading to her some of the letters of condolence that had come through that week, people
Oh,
thinking she died, and she was cackling away at all of this on the film. And a few days later, she did die. And then, of course, I did get all these letters of condolence coming through, but it was just a double whammy. And I didn't have the strength to release the film because I found it too sad. But here we are, 5 years later, literally almost to the day. It's almost exactly to the day 5 years ago that she died, and I will release that film. Thank you for
yeah.
your words.
No, she was beautiful. She totally inspired me. You just gave me goosebumps then. Before I ask you the next question, I'm going to tell you this, even though you might think I'm mad. I've had a lot of mystical experiences and, whatnot, not in the 3D world of, weird things happening or in my dreams or whatever. I've never had this. So yesterday I'm listening to a very old interview of you, just watching what some of the things you say. And all of a sudden, there were these little sparkly lights on both sides of my peripheral vision. And I thought, I know a very old man I used to talk, very spiritual man in London. He used to talk of orbs all the time, and I could never see them. I thought, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, that's how I could describe them. And they were all the left or right of me. And I was tunnel vision to you, listening to your interview. And I looked to the left of me, and these little flashy lights, you could almost call them fireflies, they didn't go away. I thought when I look at them, they're going to go away. Are my eyes going funny? And they didn't. And they stayed for about another 20 seconds. And then they just went poof. And I got this goosebump all up me. I thought, what on earth was that? I've never had that experience. So I thought, I meant to speak to this man. That was a very mystical, bizarre little experience for me yesterday.
Very good. Well, get used to these kinds of interfaces because as I've been screeching from the rooftops in recent years, but certainly right now, I'm emphasizing this, that the geometry of light has changed so drastically, certainly since 2020. I mean, late December 2020 was really shift point. I think it was the 21st of December 2020 was really the end of time, but it's taken us 6 years now, and certainly into next year, which will be the seventh year. It'll be a full cycle. It'll become very apparent that the end of time occurred at the end of 2020,
Mm.
actually, real terms. And that goes back to the harmonic convergence of 1986 and 16th of August 86, and how that was a quantum leap toward the 21st of December 2012, the end of the long count Sulcan of the Mayans. And then that led to the 21st of December 2020, which was the end of the draconian imperial reptilian lizards who were comptrollers of the terrestrial plane up until that point. So that they were exfiltrated off world at that time after the 21st of December 2020. And that means that subsequent to that, their temporal proxies are still gibbering around, like the Faucis and the Pelosi's and the Bidens and the Clintons and of this world, and I could name them in all countries. Certainly in the Commonwealth countries, most of these sock puppets in the portals of power are that same class of subhuman. They're not fully ensouled beings. They are the temporal proxies of the Zeta Reticulan draconian elements, which have been exfiltrated off Earth. But those entities that are still in the Vatican and different portals of power around the world, they are the last temporal proxies of those galactic forces that have now left. So now the canvas, in a sense, in this Earth plane is being reset now for the emergence of Homo luminous, and that is because the average human being now is an aggregate of, or a composite of, all of the different stellar genomes and linguistics. They're all now embedded in the human genome. So we've come full circle. The human experiment, in that sense, has reached a fulmination stage, and Arise Homo sapiens is what I've been speaking to for many years, but always signing off with Arise Homo sapien. But really, it's about Arise Homo luminous, how we transition from sapien to luminous, because we now have the aggregate of the galactic genome composited into our genomic expression, and that, coupled with the emergence of this new geometry of vibral light that is impacting the terrestrial plane, and in fact the entire solar system is being impacted at that level by this photonic light, this band of vibral light. That new geometry of light, as it intersects with the universal galactic genome in the human being, defines the quanta of the new angelic indigo. And that angelic indigo being is the technology of full spectrum vertical ascension, which is upon us in our generation. And our generation is not going to be dying at 70 years and 10. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, beautiful. All right. So for decades, if not hundreds of years, we've been bombarded with endless propaganda through every angle of the control grid. We call society, education, all institutions. In my eyes, this is what I call it, our antenna. They're constantly trying to rattle our antenna. They're constantly trying to give us fear.
Oh, no, I can't bear you continuing like this. I love this conversation.
Oh, sorry.
But we granted permission for those conversations, and we variously continue to invite the contrast, which we define as they. But they don't exist outside of self. It's all now about restoration and resurrection of full autonomy and sovereign expression. There is no they. There is no victim. Nothing is being done to us. We are, each one of us, either inviting that contrast to continue to be the contrast against which we define our angelic nature, or we are not. It is one or to other. But I respectfully, Lisa, and I don't mean to drown you out and your sensibilities, but respectfully, it is really now about zeroing into 0 point. And 0 point does not fucking negotiate. It is absolute still point as the I am, the witness. This is immanence. This is how God speaks to us, through pure truth. It is not by degrees. It is not by debate or it's not by degrees. So let's call it for what it is. I was never a victim of anything, ever. I was only ever orchestrating a trajectory of my soul into temporality, into time space, and the aspects of my own soul's journey that were unresolved, projected through me into this realm, onto the canvas of fractal reality, and manifested as contrast, as the bogeyman, as war, disease, poverty, misery, separation, grief, whatever it is. Those are all aspects of the unresolved aspect of my divinity that I am reflecting and refracting back to me as the living witness. So we must take the conversation forward only as sons and daughters of God, fully owning our sovereign autonomy in the way that we speak to reality, because the way we speak to it is how we invite it to speak back to us.
Yeah, agreed. However, around me, I'm seeing it. I'm totally with you there. Around me, I'm seeing a lot of people have started their journey on the dungeons of society. The Epstein files and whatnot. I had my own mother phone me and apologize to me because she thought I was clinically insane 15, 20 years ago when I was trying to tell her this.
Hey.
She's now apologized to me, and she is in the pits of darkness. I've tried to tell her, you need to watch some spiritual, inspiring videos. You need to, start getting onto the higher consciousness of things and really investigate that to counteract that darkness. But
Yeah.
she, I think, like many others, I think COVID woke a lot of people up and raised consciousness to an extent. I think this Epstein files drop has done that too, although I don't even think it touches the sides, as you know. But for these people, and I don't want to say normies, I don't really like that word, but for those that have remained asleep throughout all of these years, are starting to go, hang on a minute, what is going on? There's truth to what these conspiracy theorists have said. We are now fact checkers. We are no longer conspiracy theorists, right? So
Yeah.
what advice would you give to these people that
I
are
wouldn't. I
just
wouldn't waste my living breath. I have less than zero interest in having conversations with people who are not conversant with the flame of pure truth within the atom seed of their own relationship with self. I
Yeah.
don't have the life force to offer. My life is radiance. My path is glittering and is golden. The work that I'm doing, the comrades and the companions that I keep, the journey that I'm on is radiant and is affirming and creative and expansive and goodly and godly and immanent. I'm going to live and embody and enact and manifest these living principles. I'm not going to speak about them. I'm not going to have damn conversations over the garden fence. I'm not going to try to argue people over at dinner tables in Tel Aviv or in Geneva or in Manhattan or in Hollywood. I travel all the time, constantly. I'm no longer interested in having those conversations with people. Now, if somebody comes and asks a question, that's different. That is very different. Anyone coming and asking a question, I will answer always in honor and always to the best of my ability. But when you say, what would you say to those people? I wouldn't say anything to those people.
If they did ask you, I've got people asking me, so what about this? What about this? And
Well, exactly. What's the question then? Let's define what is the question that they're asking.
well,
And
I,
if it's a question that, if it's asked in earnest, if the prayer is fashioned aright, it'll be answered by the God in your own heart.
agreed. I am seeing a lot of people mind fucked though over this, and I'm surrounded by them in little suburban Sydney, so it's very hard to find people like yourself to connect to.
You're in the capital of Satanism on
I
earth.
know, I know.
Sydney, Australia, in my view, is the heartland of Satanism.
Right. Yes, and I'm shining bright in the middle of it, as well as trying to, bring up kids that are open-minded. It's very
God bless
hard. It's a very hard balance to.
it's why the geometry of your life is perfect, and it's why you are who you are, where you are, and why you are right here, right now. So
Mm,
good on you.
yeah, thank you. All right, so let's move on to something a little bit more exciting, and I want to talk about the age of Aquarius and the 26,000 year we're ending. It's coming into a new cycle. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, at the risk of boring anyone who's seen any of my other interviews in the last few weeks, I am speaking to this all the time. But yeah, the 26,000 grand procession of the equinox. And again, one needs to view time as being the ultimate fiction. But so long as we gave ourselves to the fiction of time, which is the fiction of government, which is the fiction of 1260 time imposed by the Vatican, which is connected to the crowns of Europe, principally the crown of England, and the crown etymologically stemming from Cronus. The crown is Cronus. Cronus is the titan that devours its own young. It's a cannibal. It's a child raping cannibal. Cronus, the father of time. Think about it. The angry, jealous gods of old, the Yahwehs, the Jehovahs, these creatures, these egregores and demiurges masquerading as gods that suck the life force out of trillions to the power of trillions of human souls over millennia through a psychic cosmic straw as we fed our life force back to them by abnegating and abdicating our thrones as sons and daughters of God. And we gave up that force through devotion and worship and banging our fucking heads on the temple floor and all of the genuflecting nonsense that religiosity has indentured us into. And all of that prana, that life force that went into the field was sucked into manifesting the very gods that then devoured us. So that was a feedback loop. Time is a feedback loop. It's a technology.
Yeah.
It's a great parasite. And we're now at a point where we are no longer required to be indentured to it. I completely forgot the thrust of your question.
The 26,000, we're entering the age.
Okay, so the 26,000 years describes the grand precession of the equinox, which is the grand cycle of time that we measure reality by, which is as our plane of existence moves in our solar system, moves around the outer fringes of the Milky Way. It takes us 26,000 odd years to spiral around the whole Milky Way. But what's really happening is that the black hole, so-called black hole, in the center of the spiral of the Milky Way, our galaxy, is a 0 point. That is where the breath of God issues, and it's a plasma field of vibral light that issues out of that spiral galaxy, that disk, when you turn it on its side. So every 13,000 years, we pass through that photon band on either side of that equation, that 26,000 year spiral. Then there's an ecliptic, and we pass into a descension when we hit that, and that we go into a 13,000 year semi-arc, which is a galactic sleep. And then we break through that photon band into a galactic day, which is another 13,000 years. So that 26,000 years describes the mechanics of duality, of binary reality, of duality itself. But we've just come from the galactic sleep cycle, the descension from Noah and the ark, 13 odd thousand years ago, the fall of Atlantis. We've gone into that 13,000 year sleep. We hit the low point, the nadir point, about 7 odd thousand years ago. Real Dungeons and Dragons kind of stuff going on then, and moved up toward the light of the photon band, broke through that recently. 21st of December 2020 defines the moment at which we breached that membrane and moved onto the other side. And for the first time could bring in the light of the new geometry of light being issued through Alpha Omega, through God. So we pass beyond the draconian elements of the great sleep into this emergence of the angelic indigo. We are beyond the reach of the devil, of the bogeyman now. We just have, many of us don't know it. We're still living in the echo of the shadow of time. But it's just an idea, and we need to move beyond the idea, which is why I've been urging people since 2012 and 2013 expressly, been urging people to please stop looking at clocks, stop celebrating time, stop celebrating anniversaries, stop counting your birthday, how old you are. I genuinely do. I've forgotten how old I am. I don't do the calculus any longer. I'm sure people around me will whisper it into my ear, but I see it as a great affront. It's a rude thing to do. We need to move beyond temporality, because it's how we program death into the DNA of one another, by adhering, worshipping a false god called time, called Cronus, and having wristwatches on. You look at the sickness of these people. I mean, people like, Mr. Beast, who's a sort of popular icon now on media because he's a rich motherfucker wearing boxer shorts, you know, when he's not pretending at being a high financier. So it's all fun and games stuff, but it's obscene. The man's got hundreds of millions of dollars worth of watches. You know, my friend Sylvester Stallone, who I love, I've known and spent time with him over the years and absolutely adore him. I see he's just auctioned off his Patek Philippe watch. I think, yes, do it. And they've disowned him, you know, for that. He's no longer in you know, part of the family. I don't know what his thinking is there, but the point I'm trying to make is everyone should be selling their goddamn watches. They should be put in museums, but we should not be wearing wristwatches. It is such an abominable satanic technology. Not Luciferian, it's not just false light, it's satanic, it's Saturnian in its logic. And it's literally creating a thrum, it's creating a pulse of falsity. 1260 time is a pulse that is the pulse of death. It's the pulse of entropy. It's why disease and mold and fungus, these things, that elements, these lower frequency elements are allowed into our paradise. It's through the function of time, the illusion of time being made manifest. So we have to stop. We have to consciously cease and desist and step back from the illusion and delusion of time. Stop wishing each other happy anything. Just start to celebrate immanence, which is immortality, which is the living moment as a never-ending moment. In no time at all, our immortal junk DNA will become resurrected and we will be able to move back into the Edenic privilege. This is technology that's written into our genetics, but we have to use the mind in order for the body to follow.
Oh, that is beautiful. I actually have had an argument with my children this week because I refuse to buy them watches. I don't wear a watch. My partner doesn't wear a watch. We won't do that. And I've showed them the symbology. I mean, they're only 12 and 8. They might, sometimes I think I should pull back a little, but I've shown them the symbology. You know, if you 12 minus 6 is 6, everything works out to be 6 on this clock. And then I went into the story of the Gregorian calendar, you know, how they've changed everything. We've got 13 full moons in a year.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. Why we have a leap year. This is all on their Saturnian clock, right?
That's right. My mum was the greatest. I mean, I think I was 5, 4 or 5, when she sat me and my sister down. She dragged a little Christmas tree in to the house and put some pretzels on it and some lights or tinsel and said, "Kids, this is the first and last Christmas we're ever going to celebrate as a family." And she said, "We're never doing it again. And we're not doing birthdays either." Can you believe it? She did that in the 1970s. God bless her.
Wow.
And I really thank my mother for being the first to do that. And I didn't understand what her rationale was. And certainly her rationale wasn't as evolved and as sophisticated as mine is, which is about stop programming death into the DNA. My mother just had the right instinct that it was an abomination to be celebrating Christmas. And we should just stop that functioning as part of that cycle. But in any event, I congratulate you and I embrace your partner as well for being the right stuff. And you carry right on.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. Christmas is definitely a challenge I'd like to take on. I don't know how my kids would deal with that. But you know,
So
even
just give them 2 other days in the year that they can choose, to give each of them a choice and say you can all either choose, both of you can choose another day of the year each. And we're going to celebrate on that day. We're going to have a celebration. We're going to go out. We're going to create something beautiful and special, but we ain't going to do the satanic Christmas ritual.
it does appear, though, that humanity is towards an inevitable global AI control grid, or depending how you look at it, I think AI could be used as an amazing, beautiful new Earth, as you would say. What do you think of that? Where do you think we're going to be in 5 to 10 years? Do you think?
I'm not that interested in speculating into the future. Again, I'm as disinterested in the future as I am in the past. I'm only interested in the imminent now, and I'm not trying to sound like a ponce. I'm genuinely interested in the living moment. But let's just speculate. 5 or 6 years from now, Well, I can tell you what's going to happen in 2032. We're going to be inducted into the Galactic Confederation of Worlds. So there's going to be widespread, everyone on Earth will know about our galactic heritage, about the fact that we are all extensions of the star nations, that the human being by definition and default is the galactic genome. That's all going to be common knowledge. We're going to be in a place of 0-point learning. Are there going to be smart cities and that kind of transhuman scenario? Without any question of doubt, yes, that's going to be very much a part of the equation. On the other side of the equation are going to be the Adamite humans, the new earthers, my people. And we are establishing right now already our own micronations, our own jurisdictions. We have our own free energy technologies. We're building our own quantum computers this year. We're launching our own global financial system and economic system. We don't need to participate in the contracts, the bonds, or the spells of the Atlantean system beyond a certain point. And next year, 2027, really rather defines that break point, that breakaway civilization point where the new Earth jurisdictions, technology, and fellowship lock and load fully into becoming an alternative reality to that transhumanist smart city monstrosity, which in any event is going to be a better world for people to live in than the last age of blood ritualism and harvest of humanity and sacrifice. So the smart city is part of a kind of utopian vision for some, this kind of AI augmented transhumanist smart city is not going to be, it's going to be all surveillance and control, but it's also going to be long life, and it's going to be beautification, and it's going to be a utopian world in contrast to the kind of Dickensian Victorian reality of only 100 years ago. In the world, the Industrial Revolution, all of that. So we're not going to have wars. We're not going to be having in the same way. It's going to be a very different kind of world. But the counterpoint to that new transhumanist, luciferic, smart city world, utopian world is going to be the real, the organic, the sentient. Those of us who are choosing to not be governed and controlled by algorithms, but to have our reality augmented by them and served by them. But I think ultimately it'll probably be morph into one culture, and what will prevail, the light prevails, the highest frequency set in the subspace quantum chamber is the one that always wins the day. I've said this a dozen times or 3 dozen times in interviews over the years, that when you feed a top C note of a violin into a subspace chamber in a laboratory that's a locked subspace, and that subspace is filled with discordant notes from cellos and very ugly kind of cacophony, you then feed one single perfect top C note from a violin, and you sit back and watch what happens over the coming days. Eventually, all those discordant notes, which are rebounding in that subspace chamber, they all move, oscillate eventually back up toward the most perfect note in the chamber, which is the top C of the violin, and they all harmonize to the highest frequency in that chamber. That's the default position as we move through the new geometry of light and all of the false geometry that we've been carrying, which is connected to the wounds and the scars. And that goes back to galactic history as well. All of that stuff starts to settle, move away into dissolution. We end up moving perfectly into the immanence. That's the resurrection. That's the butterfly coming out of the chrysalis.
Yeah, beautiful. I also, I think all this transhumanism, I think it's just to make us disconnected from self, isn't it? Ultimately, having everyone locked into Netflix, having everyone locked into all this technology, the phone in hand.
But again, it's not having us locked in. They don't exist so long as I don't permit them to. And when I choose truly to evolve beyond the dialectic, I realize that I'm simply circle jerking by having the conversation. There is no fucking them and us.
Mm.
That was part of the dialectic that, yes, to some extent, the functionaries of government, the functionaries of the Catholic Church, the functionaries out there of the status quo are following orders, and they're shooting to kill, and they're poisoning the water, and they're seeding the atmosphere with fucking, aluminum and barium and phosphate and strontium. That's all variously true. But all of those actions issue only off one action, which is my
Permission.
refusal to my divine will and to not action my divine will, which is to, when I stop dreaming wisely, I allow the lesser gods to start to dream badly for me. And then I become subject to that field of incoherence. I just think we've got to stop this endless conversation about the them and us, because it's never served us. It never will. If we simply start to go now and train ourselves into the affirmations, the creative, expansive, affirmative power and majesty of our divine will and our immanent nature, all of that stuff falls away. The Inland Revenue Service is a fucking idea. The
Yeah.
IRS, they're bad ideas whose time is already over. They're going to move into dissolution in days and weeks ahead, literally. They're not even going to exist. Right now, they're a kind of draconian threat to people because they allow it to be a threat, because too many people are afraid of those brown envelopes coming in through the letterbox. And then they take them seriously. And then they make the mistake of opening them. They make the mistake of reading. They make the mistake of filling out the fucking forms and saying, I owe you any money. Sign here. Send that back. You've just signed the contract, baby.
Yeah.
Do not ever fill out those forms under any circumstances. And obviously, I'm going to have the argument, well, what if they come to the front? Let them come to the front door. There are ways and ways of dealing with them. But, if one is serious about the question of sovereignty, if one is serious about the question of liberty and autonomy, then do the math and do the hard work, which is establish a irrevocable universal trust. Go and scrape together $3,500. Get that trust set up. Put your home and all of your assets into that trust. Designate yourself and your family members as beneficiaries of the trust. You've just removed yourself entirely from the government dragnet, from the Inland Revenue dragnet. They will never have a hold on you. You are now untouchable, but you've got to go through the motions at least of doing. It's that old thing about, Jaime, the old Shylock, going to the temple and saying, God, oh God, help me, help me win the lottery, help me win the lottery. And then the next week comes back again, bangs his head on the temple floor. Oh God, why have you forsaken me? Please, would you just help me win the lottery? I need the money. I can't survive. Third week he comes back, bangs his head on the floor and starts bewailing, oh God, help me win the lottery. And thunder and lightning, the clouds open and God comes out and says, for fuck's sake, Jaime, help me, meet me halfway, buy a lottery ticket. That's really the gist of it. Buy the lottery ticket, participate, meet God halfway with your protestations and do the work. And the graft is remove yourself from indentureship. There are ways of giving public notice now and doing it. There are ways of redeeming your treasury bond. There are ways of getting your children outside of the satanic grip of CPS and ownership by the state. It requires a fair bit of work, but it's doable. It's doable within days and weeks, not months and years. But not enough people practice this stuff, Lisa. They all enjoying the dialectic, having a tea party in a prison cell and bitching, endlessly bitching about the status quo. I'm done. I'm no longer part of that conversation. I've been part of the solutions for 25 years. I've been screaming about them and writing about them and publishing it for 20 years. And in the last 5-6 years, I have given literally thousands of interviews, and I generally say the same thing, and I'm happy to do so because I learn from people like you and your husband, what you're doing with your kids. I needed to hear that today. That's really uplifting for me to hear that that's franchising, that's syndicating, that wisdom flame is growing. So I don't begrudge having interviews. I enjoy these conversations because I learn as much as I give. I'm just saying, let's change the thrust of the conversations from what they're doing to us to what we are permitting happen to us, what we can
100%.
take. Yeah, yeah.
100%. And that's what I was banging on about in COVID. Everyone was very sick of me. I kept saying to people, if you don't give them permission, they can't touch you. I said they again. I shouldn't have said they again, but that energy, that draconian, satanistic energy cannot get to you unless you permit.
And just keep underscoring it. I want everyone to change the goddamn narrative,
Yeah,
because that
right.
is the divine will kicks in. Either hit the master switch or don't, but count Sacha Stone out of the conversation moving forward, because either we recognize that we are entirely in control of this fractal hologram called life, or you continue to choose to be indentured as a wage slave, or as a sacrificial totem. It's a choice. Everything is a divine choice. If we don't want government, then stop paying taxes. And if you don't want to death, if you don't want disease and death, stop celebrating time. These are simple technologies and simple algorithms that I'm putting out. I mean, I walk around barefoot because I don't have any shoes. I don't want shoes. I don't want anything other than the most simple existence imaginable. I want to be in the trenches. I want to be in the ditches. I want to be I've just planted trees today. I want to be literally affirming and building the new earth wherever I am. Wherever I am in this world, even if I was locked in a prison cell, I'd be coaxing fucking mold and lichen out of the windowsill, because we have it. Everything is a choice. Everything can be affirmed, and it can be brought into a higher state of resonance. Every single situation can be. And that's where the majesty, the technology of the divine immanent cloak and of the majesty of the human being reveals itself, is in the fact that even if you are mute and blind and paralyzed, you can still conjure. You can still conjure beauty. You can still, what you hold in the mind's eye becomes the seed that then moves into the temporal universe and becomes manifest, enacted and manifest as reality. So each of us in that sense are the engine of creation, but only when we know it and we own that piece.
Just one quick story. My daughter, she was 6 years old, and she came out to me and she said, Mum, she'd only been in the bed for 2 minutes, and she said the ceiling turned to space, and she heard a voice say, the meaning of life is life itself. And then the space, the ceiling, just evaporated back into the ceiling. And she came out, and she'd only been in bed for 2 minutes, so she wasn't dreaming. And she came out and she told me this story, and she looked a little stunned. And I thought, well, if that was a message for her, but that was also a message for me. Like,
hell yeah, and for all of us.
that is beautiful, right? And I thought, this girl is tapped in. And yeah, we've been trying to do the work as a family.
What is she?
She's now 12.
Amazing. No, I love things like that. Thank you. That's a beautiful takeaway, and very special stuff. That, and isn't it amazing how one line like that? Now you can't think up a line like that.
No.
So that was definitely a divine transmission from her super soul, her oversoul. But what a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's right. And before you go, my son was 4, and he said to me, oh, Mum, I chose you. I said, what do you mean you chose me? He said, I chose you. There were some other parents, but I didn't really like them, so I chose you.
Wow, he remembered that, huh?
Yeah, so which was going to get me into, are we living in the great remembering? Because these kids are still connected to soul, right? So
that's exactly what we are. And kudos again to you and your husband for creating the space for these kids to be able to remember, because most kids have had that remembrance butchered out of them by the age of 3 because of the syntax and the bad use of language, the bad forms, energetic forms that are like revolving around them. So kudos to you guys. You clearly kept a lucid kind of quantum space around your kids, and that's going to yield such an incredible benediction as they grow older. But I have to say, that's the first time I've heard of a kid remembering, speaking to the fact that he remembered other family that he could have chosen. It would be fascinating and under hypnosis to see if he could actually name that family and do some research then and check out, because almost certainly another soul would have been born to that family, because that would have been an inception point in the womb of that mother, that woman,
That's
that
right.
was also celebrated for that same time. And so it would be interesting to do that research.
That's right. That's right. He said that other family treated the daughter very well, but didn't treat the son very well. He was very, he was descriptive.
Amazing.
I was like,
That's
it's beautiful. Yeah. So I think I'd like to end on that. I'd like to say, I think we just need to keep tapping into that source. I think that's what
yeah.
everyone has to do. And you are
Yeah.
right about the they. Let's forget about the they and look at the now and look at what's right in front of us with that source. Because I think that source is always talking to us, right?
Bravo, bravissimo. Well, thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate the conversation with
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Listen, you take care, and I hope to speak to you again soon.
Good. Yes, come back at me anytime after we launch the exchange. The next few weeks are really important, and I'll come up for air after that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Much love.
beautiful. Take care. Thank you, Sasha.